Welcome everyone to the PJ's Cast. I'm your host Pierce, alongside of my good co-host Dylan. But we have a very special guest today. Joining us is Lauren Campbell. How are we doing, Lauren?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, guys, for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on. It's nice to have you on. So you do sports reporting for Mass Live Sports. So do you cover all Boston teams right now?
I do, yes. So a little bit of everything, which is great when it comes to Bruins and Celtics. Not so great when it comes to Patriots and a very slow Red Sox off season. But at least I know when it comes to the Red Sox, there's hope that this can get going this off season.
Yeah, I feel other than Otani, really nothing has happened in the baseball off season. But
Yeah, it's been a slow off season.
I'm wondering how did you grow up in the Boston area, and how did you get your start in sports writing? I guess.
Yeah, so I grew up in Massachusetts, born and raised. So a lot of sports in our household growing up. We watched a lot
Hmm.
of baseball, a lot of hockey. And in high school is when I started kind of thinking about a career in journalism. And I read the sports section every single day. My parents got the newspaper, so I'd read the newspaper like an 85-year-old man with my muffin every single morning and my cup of coffee. And just started being like, I can do this as a career. So I went to college for it. It took me a long time to get through undergrad. It took me like 6 years, but it's not about how fast you get through school or anything like that. Did a lot of internships, a lot of blogging. And I couldn't find a job in sports right away, which is not uncommon. It's a very tough industry to break into. And I was working at a gym. I was working at construction firms as an admin. I was doing accounting. I was doing everything except like getting paid for journalism. But just I pretty much blogged my way until I was able to break into this industry about 8 years ago. So then just kind of climbing from there.
I feel that's always the way to get in. Is like it's not necessarily which careers you work; it's the people you know, and you kind of slowly work your way up. Some people get the job right away, but then sometimes it takes a while. But I guess it's all about the journey and not how long it takes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the people say that it's a marathon, not a race, or
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think I have that the right way. So yeah, it's kind of like that. I mean, I know people who have done this the second they've graduated from college, and I know people who are still trying to break in, and they'll get there. It's just everyone's path is different, and it's tough no matter which way you slice it, but it's a really good group of reporters and beat writers in Boston. So very lucky in that regard. And everyone's worked really hard. So I feel like we all kind of have that admiration for each other, that we all have different paths, and it's been a journey for each and every one of us.
Kind of on the topic of making things quick to the big profession. Matthew Poitras, we just found out today he's getting sent to the World Juniors, and coming into the season, he had a very good season last year in the OHL, and there's maybe some talks maybe he can make the team, and he kind of came onto the scene and had a very hot start. And I'm guessing by looking by the stats, it's kind of cooled down, and I'm assuming that's probably why they're sending him to the World Juniors just to kind of get his confidence back. I kind of want to ask about how he's been playing down the stretch because he had that hot start, and if he might stay here the rest of the year once he comes back from the World Juniors, or they might send him back to the CHL, OHL where he plays. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's great that he's able to go to the World Juniors, represent his country. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment and a huge honor for anyone who gets to be able to do that. And I think it's a good start for him. I mean, he had a great start to the season. And I think being able to go to the World Juniors, people keep saying that it'll be a good break for him. And I don't think they mean it like physically, because you have a lot of games and a lot of days, especially if Canada gets to the gold medal game. So I think that it's going to be great for him mentally. He'll have some competition, people around his age. He's still only 19, and I think people forget that he had a really strong camp. He had a really strong start to the season. And I know Jim Montgomery has benched him in the third. He's limited his minutes in the third period. And some of that, too, just stems from him not having the strength and the stamina yet for an NHL schedule. And that will come eventually. That's not a shot against him at all. And I think, going to the World Juniors will definitely help kind of have a mental reset, play with the competition around his age, and just get right back to the NHL in January and hopefully, get back to what he was in the beginning. But I think he stays with the team the rest of the year. I know Don Sweeney said today that he made it very clear that once the World Juniors are over, he will come back to the Bruins. But that's kind of been the thing all year, is that he knows just because he went past the 9 games and will be with the NHL, he knows that that's not the case for the entire season, or knows that might not be the case the entire season. He's very aware that he can go back, but even with his little slump right now, he's still happy. He's still smiling. He's not taking shots at Montgomery or anything. And I think that they have a very good relationship and they're very good communication and about where they expect him to be and what they expect of him. And I mean, he's, like I said earlier, he's 19. There's going to be slumps. He's not going to be perfect. Not everyone comes into the NHL and starts off hot right away. So World Juniors will be very, very good for him. And I know people are like, risk of injury. I mean, everyone who goes over there has the same risk of injury as anyone else. So I'm excited for him. Like I said, it's an honor to represent your country. And I think it'll be a nice mental reset and just kind of get back to what worked for him so far in the beginning of the season that made him so successful.
Yeah, I feel him not being a notable draft pick, he didn't go in the top 10 or anything. He's a second round pick, and again, still 19 years old. You still have to be, as the Bruins management and coaching, still impressed with how big strides he's made being as a 19-year-old. So yeah, he's gonna go through his slumps, but I think that's a good start for him. Schmitty, do you have any questions to ask? I wanna hand the floor to you. I don't want to keep talking here.
Yeah, I just I wanted to ask, because obviously Boston's sitting at the top of the conference right now. They're having a very good season once again. They had that tremendous start back-to-back years now. But as we progress into 2024, I'm curious as to what Boston might be looking at when come the trade deadline, because I know they don't have as much draft capital as they probably like to use, but also this team is making another look at a deep run, and I wonder if Don Sweeney's looking at some of the lineup and wondering if he could add, or I'm just wondering what you're hearing on maybe what would happen at the deadline in a couple months.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that we're already talking about the trade deadline and what teams could be doing. But we're at that point in the year where we kind of see what teams are, their identity, and what they could do come playoff time. And I think if I'm the Bruins, I would look at adding another center, and maybe with the emergence of Geeky over the last week or so has been great. Obviously, Poitras, I think we'll get back to what he was in the beginning, or at least somewhere near where he was at the start of the season. But losing Bergeron and Krejci, and even Nosek, he was great on the faceoffs. He really helped fill a void with those faceoffs, and I think people underestimate how much the Bruins do miss him. But with Johnny Beecher, that's he's picked up some of those faceoff wins. But I would really like a center and maybe some more defensive depth. I love Mason Lohrei. I think he's going to be a star in the NHL, but he's just not ready yet, and he needs those big minutes in the AHL. He needs to really work on his game in a way where he's not making the small mistakes, when he's not picking up his guy or he kind of looks lost on the ice, and that will come. I think just he needs more of those big minutes in the AHL. So I think just not a top pairing defenseman by any means, just something easy they can get with the lack of what they have, and their cap space too. I mean, this was an issue last year, and call it a blessing in disguise that Taylor Hall went on long-term IR, where they were able to get Bertuzzi in that regard. But something like a Bertuzzi, but in terms of a center, someone like that, where maybe they can figure that out. I mean, they don't need much, but they do need some help in regards to the center position and a little bit of help on defense.
Yeah, you can never be too deep come playoff time.
Yep.
All it takes is one injury, and we've seen it with a lot of teams over the years. The one I always think about is, I bet Nashville going into that cup run, I bet they wish they had one more center once Ryan Johansson went down. So it's always nice to have one more. Like, hell, even when the Hawks won in 2015, I bet they don't feel too bad about trading the first for Vermette anymore, because he was huge come playoff time. So, and the Bruins have been known to make those moves over the year. Like, I feel like a move that's finally getting credit for them is that Charlie Coyle move a couple years back, because he has really taken that step into the top 6 and been the player that I think we all know he was capable of being. He was just kind of down the depth chart because, Bergeron was still performing at an elite rate. So it would be nice. I agree. Like, one more center would definitely do them justice.
Yeah. And Coyle, I mean, he's really taken a step forward. And I think that stems from Krejci and Bergeron leaving. I think when Krejci went away overseas for that 1 year, I think there was always that thought that he was going to come back, and there still was Bergeron. So now they're like a lot of players, not just Coyle, are forced to take that step forward. But he's definitely just been a really bright spot for this team. He's stepped up when this team has needed it, and he's hard to stop. And I mean, he had that mishap in overtime the other night, but overall, you look at what he's done this year, and even last year, he's really, really stepped up and kind of grown into the center that they've needed him to be.
100%.
In terms of injuries, like also defensive depth, I think it's the 2011 Canucks where I don't know if it was 12 or 13, but they used over 10 defensemen. Like you can never have enough defensemen come playoff time, and obviously them upgrading the center position would help them a lot, because it feels like it's very Patrick right now, especially with Bergeron and Krejci done. But like they're getting the job done. Like Patra had the hot start, and then it seemed like Zaka took off, and now Coyle's took over for a bit, and now it sounds like Morgan Geekie is stepping up. So I always think like the perfect trade would be them going to Calgary and say, what would you want for Elias Lindholm, making another trade for Lindholm at the trade deadline and potentially getting another defenseman in there. I don't know if they could get Noah Hannafin. I mean, that'd be cool, him being a Boston boy, but maybe a Chris Tanev would fit perfectly in Boston as well, I think.
Yeah, I know Lindholm, there's always that connection, and I feel like he's always been connected to the Bruins, whether it's through rumors or just fan speak on Twitter when people are like, this would make perfect sense. And I do think he'd be a really good fit, and Tanev too. And I mean, I think any of those guys you mentioned would be a great fit. It's just now is a matter of, can they get that done? Who are you giving up in terms of bringing someone in? And if you're shipping someone out, whoever you're bringing in, you have to 100%, 110% be sure that they're making your team better, that your team isn't getting worse because of who you're shipping out. So a bit of a double-edged sword for the Bruins going into the trade deadline, but if anyone can make it happen, it's Don Sweeney. He gets crap for how he drafted, and that's fine. But I think he makes up for it in the way that he completes trades.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I feel – oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, like, the cap gymnastics we've seen the last couple deadlines, like, we know they could get a $5 million contract down to 1.25 if they throw a couple more picks around. That's very possible. So it should be interesting. What were you going to say, Pierce?
Oh, I was going to say, like, yeah, if you GMs that really want to make moves, get moves done. Like we've seen, yeah, even the Bruins, like we've seen Vegas do it when they want to get a player, they get a player. It doesn't matter how many times they got to retain down the salary or flip other players to get a player. I mean, yeah, you can fault Don Sweeney for maybe not drafting the best, but I mean, the Bruins have been competitive, consistently a playoff team for 15 years now. And even when they weren't there was a couple of years they didn't make the playoffs, like they were still right there. They've always been a competitive team. That's what I would want my general manager to do, is continually make these moves. They did it last year for Bertuzzi. They did it for Lindholm as well. And like a couple of years back, it didn't quite work out. Like they went for Andre Kasha and got rid of David Backes. Like Rick Nat, like you can go on and on the list of players they've traded for. I would. Yeah, maybe the prospect cupboard is barren right now, but I mean, having guys like Matthew Patra come up and like Mason Lohrei, it's Mason Lohrei, right? That's how you say it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not like they're completely bare. Like they have a couple guys coming up. Like you got to do it right now. I think everyone kind of thought after last year that was their last chance to go to run, but who knows? Maybe with less expectations, they're still going to finish a great year. Maybe this could be the year that they, at the least, maybe go to a conference final or something and maybe not win a cup, but still make a big move at the deadline.
Yeah, I think that's the big key for them is that deadline, because I mean, a lot can happen between now and the deadline in terms of standings and where they are. And, you know, they're one injury away from being down a key player, whether that's on the top line. I mean, Zaka missed the last few games, or even the fourth line. So you mentioned it earlier, can never have too much depth. There's no such thing as too much depth. And, you know, Johnny Beecher, Mason Lohrei, Matt Patra, they're all very young, and it wouldn't hurt for them to get somebody with a little bit of experience under their belt. Playoff experience obviously also helps a lot in these situations, but I think they do have a good team. And I think, yes, the window is closed, you know, for the 2011 core, you know, with everyone pretty much gone from that team, minus a few, but there's still that culture there. There's still that next man up mentality there. And I know it's cliche, but they talk about the culture all the time that Chara came in to help build, and everyone just has bought in since playing under him, whether that's Bergeron, Pastrnak, Brad Marchand. They've all bought into that culture, and they help kind of build or continue to build that with the younger players. And even the veterans that came in, when Nick Foligno was in Boston, he bought in right away. And I'm sure you guys as Blackhawks fans know how much.
He's brought that to Chicago.
Yeah, just as a leader, just like he might not bring, 20, 25 goals, but he's going to bring you leadership that you don't get in every single team. So it's something, someone like him can make a huge difference to a team.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for Boston's advantage, there's always those type of guys come deadline time. So it just comes down to, like, if you can make the salary work on some of these moves, you could bring in one of those guys for the bottom six. And I feel like it makes everyone around them better, and they'll be more situationally sound. Because, like, I feel like Boston's one of the most situationally sound teams in the league. If you take them on a bad night, you're going to maybe get 20 shots up on them. So if they could like you said, you need to find people that fit into that culture. Like, I thought Garnet Hathaway was a great pickup by them last year come playoff time. Like, just someone who's going to make the other team's life hell.
Yes.
And it seems like Boston always has a knack for finding those guys.
That's the Bruins MO there.
Yeah. No, even Bertuzzi too. He'd always get under people's skin. Him and Marchand had beef for years. And, it's in Hathaway too. He gets under people's skin and he knows how to do that. And 9 times out of 10 isn't going to impact the Bruins. He's not going to go off for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or anything like that. So, those smaller pickups that aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg either are always so beneficial to have. Even Dmitry Orlov, I feel like he doesn't get enough credit because the defense was very good. But he came in and he just fit right in with that team. No matter what pairing you put him on, he was ready to go. And him and Hathaway came cheap, and so did Bertuzzi at the end of the day.
100%. I think Pierce wanted to ask a question real quick.
Yeah, kind of to wrap up on that, like, to that point you made before of, like, since Chara came in, I feel that's when the Bruins really made that step into being this consistent playoff team, Stanley Cup contender for the past 15 years, is like switching captains. Like, they went from Chara to Bergeron, which is about as, like, perfect of a captain trade-off you can get. And then they've gone from Bergeron to Marchand. Like, no matter who is the captain and even the head coach, like, they played so well under Bruce Cassidy. They were 1 win away from the cup, and they fired him after losing, I think, in the first round against Carolina. Then they bring Jim Montgomery in, and like he has an absurd record after, I think, a little over 100 games where he has like 80 wins or something ridiculous like that. Like, no matter who the captain is, like what the personnel is in that locker room or who's the coach is, it's like, what it is to be a Boston Bruin. Like, exactly what Boston Bruins hockey is like. They might have the most clearest identity of any team in the NHL, which is why they've been so good for so long. And the general manager knows how to find those players to fit in.
He does. And, he does have that red mark, we'll call it, when they signed Mitchell Miller last year, I think it was. But
yeah,
they thankfully corrected that. But that's a mark on his signing there. But yeah, when Chara came in, he said during his retirement press conference that he wanted to build a culture the right way. And he knew that this team was the team to do it with. And like I mentioned earlier, everyone just bought in, and it was easy to buy in when you have people who genuinely care about the game, who genuinely care about you as people. These Bruins, they're friends. They're like best friends off the ice. Jeremy Swayman and Linus Allmark, like, they are like the best of friends in the entire world. They are friendship goals. Like, they are just like, they know what they need to do on the ice. There's no competition between them. Bergeron and Marchand were best friends, still are best friends. And it's just, they're just a really tight-knit group. And I think that even though things at the end were, dicey with Cassidy, he was still very successful. He still got the best out of the players. And that's what Jim Montgomery is doing. And he's getting the best out of them in a different way. And people want to perform for guys like Cassidy. We saw that last year with the Vegas Knights, winning it all. Of course, like Cassidy said it wasn't a revenge tour, but I know it just had to feel so sweet, just winning that cup and finally getting his name on the cup. But when you buy into a culture of a team, whether it's Vegas, Boston, anywhere, it's easy to be motivated to give your best every single night. And when you don't give your best every single night, your coach you're going to hear about it from your coach. And I think that's great. You hold your players accountable to a certain degree. I like that Montgomery does not, if there's something like a message to be had and the media will ask him about it, he'll say, oh, that message will come Monday or Tuesday. And even though some people might not like that, to me that says, I'm going to speak to the player. I'm going to tell him what I'm saying before anyone else hears it. and make sure he knows where we're at. And that's part of the culture that Chara helped build all those years ago. And it's just continuing without him, which is great, because yes, Marchand is still there from that time, and he's going to pass that on to Pastrnak when Marchand retires, and who knows, I feel like he could tell you he's got 10 years left in him, but and then it just continues to go down the line, and that's a very special thing about this team.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say they all need tremendous credit, because we've seen time and time again. Heck, we even saw it with the Blackhawks when the last 5 years or so. Once you get to that success level, sometimes you see these, like, you just see why culture matters so much, because you see so many organizations turn into a boys club after
It
they
got
won.
so rotten and stale in that Blackhawks front office, especially in the late teens and early 2020s, before all the Kyle Beach stuff came out. And that's another thing for the Bruins. Like, they were the first team, them and Bruce. Like, again, Bruce Cassidy was the head coach. It didn't matter who the captain or head coach was, but there's that culture, like, that we can't have this happen in the locker room. We need to make this a safe place for everyone to play hockey. So that's another thing for them.
Well, yeah, and I was also going to say, like, they just don't suck. Like, that's another thing. Like, that's more the point I was trying to make. Like, we've watched the Caps and the Penguins do the same thing, where they just, we'll bring back the guys that worked for us before. And they're both at near middle to the bottom of the standings. And Boston they've, like you said, I just think you're 100% right with that culture Chara made almost a decade ago still reigns on and still holds strong in that locker room. And I think, like you said, that's tremendous credit, because you just seen it across the league. There's so many teams that just get stuck because they try to stick to a way that is gone. And I feel like the whole thing with the Bruins is they do stay the same, but they're also adapting constantly. And like, I feel like you could look at their play style from 5 years ago to now, and yeah, there are changes, but that's that grit, that grind, that like the camaraderie is still there. And like it goes to the leadership group, and I guess it's also to keeping your players around too and making them happy. And I really thought the Pastrnak contract was going to be tougher to solve, and they patted that down immediately. Got Lindholm 8 years, got McAvoy 8 years. Like, I got to give Sweeney credit. He gets it done every time we have even a little bit of doubt. So
he does, and they stay. I mean, they'll give you as much answer as that they can. I mean, with the whole Pastrnak thing, every day we were asking about it, and both of them were like, we're in talks with Pastrnak's camp, and Pastrnak be like, I'll let my agent handle all of that. And I was like, there's something deeper there. Like, it's like I think they're at the finish line. And when they got it done at the deadline, I was like, I think this is going to be when it happens, because it makes too much sense. They'll know kind of where they're at in terms of cap space for the following year, who they kind of want to bring back, where they stand in terms of acquisitions. Maybe they have an idea of free agency next year, especially with that cap crunch that they were up against in the offseason. But yeah, I mean, Sweeney will go out there. If he wants to keep a player, he's going to keep them. And I was talking about this earlier today about, like, when they decided not to keep Torrey Krug, when sure, it certainly sucked, because he was loved here. He did his job very well. And you look at it now, and he's hurt constantly, which you can never predict that. And that's unfortunate for him, because I do think he's a good player. But small things like that, where it's like that ended up in the moment when he goes and signs with the Blues after they beat the Bruins in the Stanley Cup final, it's like, wow, that kind of hurts. But then you look back and it's like, that ended up being the right move for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm. And then they went and got Hampus Lindholm the next year. And I remember that had a lot of question marks at the time too. They were like, why are you giving this guy 8 years after he had a couple of middling years in Anaheim, and then he gets healthy for the first time in his whole career, I feel like. And he's playing some of the best hockey I think he's ever played the last year and a half. It's those type of things.
He finished like top 5 in Norris voting last year, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think there's something there that Sweeney sees in players that maybe you and I don't see just from like the general eye test. And also, I'm not watching every single NHL game, so I don't see these players as much as, the Sweeneys and everyone are paying attention to. And I look at, someone like Pavel Zacha, when he never reached his ceiling in New Jersey, and they saw that. They were like, he can definitely do better here. I mean, anyone's going to play their best hockey next to Patrice Bergeron. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But even before his injury, I mean, he's really stepped up into that top line role, and he has such good chemistry with Pastrnak. And I don't know if there was something there when Sweeney was like, there's going to be that Czech connection there, the Czech style of hockey, or if it's going to be something more like he's more of like a leader and just can't get that in New Jersey, and he's getting it in Boston. So if you can hear my dog, I'm sorry. Somebody had the nerve
My dog
to
does
walk
the
by
same
my
thing. Don't
house.
worry.
So she is not happy that someone just walked by the house. But just that that Sweeney has that eye to. It's kind of reminds me of like older school Bill Belichick when he could find some almost make not something out of nothing, because these players are something, but you can get more out of a player that maybe necessarily wasn't able to get more out of from the original team. Taylor Hall's another great example. I know he's gone for this year now, unfortunately, but he's bounced around a bit. He's MVP, he's first round pick, or first overall pick. There's something obviously going to be there. I think Boston got the most out of him, and it's just, and he was playing on the third line here. So there's that knack to see that the potential in players is so much more than what they're giving to their teams, their old teams to their new teams.
100%. And I guess that kind of leads into a question I had real quick about just like, because we're talking about Sweeney and guys that he wants to keep in the long term and whatnot. There are a couple contracts up this offseason that I'm curious as to maybe if they're going to let him walk in unrestricted free agency or let him stick around. In particular, DeBrusk and Grzelcyk, because I know I think DeBrusk is making 4 and Grzelcyk's like 3.8 or something, but Boston's at a point where you could keep them or you could use that cap space elsewhere. And I'm just curious what you're hearing right now in terms of if they're going to stay or go.
I haven't heard anything about what their future holds. I know that DeBrusk had said in the offseason that he hopes to avoid free agency and just remain in Boston. He's comfortable here. He's made his connections and his friends and his family. They're still in Canada, but he's got, his Bruins family in Boston. So I think that he has a better chance of returning. Like if the Bruins had to pick one, I would say DeBrusk. And I think that just stems from them having a lot of help in terms of defense in Providence. And there's still a lot, they still have really good forward help in Providence as well. But I think that DeBrusk is slumping right now. He's acknowledged it, but he's not the reason they're losing games. He's not causing them to lose games. And it's certainly not for lack of effort. He should probably have at least 10 goals right now, because he just has had no puck luck. It's just not going in the net, but he's still bringing the intensity every night. So I'm not really worried about him. And I like Grzelcyk. I think that, he's done a lot for this organization. He's local. His dad is within the organization as well. And there's just a really good connection there. But I also think someone like him, because there's so much, they do have other options on defense, that he might be the odd man out come free agency. But then you look at someone like, would you rather keep him or Derek Forbort? And I think most people would say Grzelcyk, but but they might have draft capital there in DeBrusk or Grzelcyk. If there's a team going on a run, they want a rental or the possibility to re-sign them at the end of the season. But I do think that the Bruins will try to keep DeBrusk. I don't know if he'll get the long term that he was hopeful for just because of the start, but there's still a lot of hockey left to be played. Like I know I said earlier, at that point in the season where we kind of know what teams are in terms of their identity, but I still think DeBrusk has another level. And I think that stems from there's been a lot of line changes in the Bruins for the games. He doesn't really have consistent line mates like he did last year. And I think that losing Bergeron, Bergeron knew where he was on the ice every single game, every single night. And that's, it's something he has to get used to as well. But neither Grzelcyk nor DeBrusk are the reason the Bruins have lost games. But I think if they had to choose one, I do think that they would stick with DeBrusk.
Yeah, and I guess on the bright side for Grzelcyk, if he does hit unrestricted free agency, we've seen the kind of contracts defensemen have been fetching lately. He'll get a nice 4 or 5 year deal somewhere. Someone will pay for his services for sure.
Yeah, he's quick. He's a puck mover. Like he definitely can benefit any team, and he still can benefit the Bruins. He certainly does. Yeah. So, but if he can go get that 4 or 5 year deal, go get that deal, because he's, what is he, 28? That's when you're hitting that's getting old, quote unquote, in sports world. So you want to get that long-term deal locked up.
100%.
Last thing I want to bring up till we get to some lightning round questions here. We briefly brought up their friendship, but I want to talk about the performance of Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, and Jeremy Swayman potentially signing a contract extension on January 1st, because I believe he went to arbitration last year, so he's only on 1 year right now, but he's still eligible to sign an extension on January 1st. And I'm just wondering, how do you think that will play out? Do you think maybe in the offseason they'll look at trading maybe Linus Ullmark, or they try to keep both, or maybe even trade Swayman? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the goaltending situation?
I think they'll try to keep both. I think that they have a really good thing with both of them. I mean, you have the Vezina, the reigning Vezina winning champion trophy winner. You also have Jeremy Swayman, who is making a case for it this year. So it's crazy just like how good they both are. And yes, they've certainly struggled at times, but how many times can you look at a goalie who gave up 4 goals and still say it was their best performance of the night or best performance of the year and was the Bruins' best player on the ice? So they have something very special with the both of them, but they do also have really good goaltending in Providence. And it's like, do you want to kind of block anyone from coming up to the NHL? But I think if nothing is broken, don't try to fix it. And unless you can get like an absolute haul for Ullmark, which you probably could have last year after he won the Vezina, he probably was at his highest, but you have something really good with them. Just like I mentioned earlier, there's no competition between them. They're constantly cheering each other on. Ullmark's kids call Jeremy Uncle Sway. So like they are very, very close. And I don't know if the Bruins should even break them up just for like their friendship and their mental health. Like, could they be away? Like, could they work separately from each other? And it's really good what they have. And I think that is part of that culture, yes, but it's also just them just connecting and wanting the best for this team. And that's not to say like other goalie tandems don't want the best for their team, of course, but it's just working so well. And I would be shocked if unless something goes catastrophically wrong, I don't see them trying to split that tandem up anytime soon.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you pretty much got Tim Thomas and Tuukka Rask from like 10 years ago right there. So might as well keep it as like together as long as you can. Like Linus Ullmark last year winning the Vezina and scoring a goalie goal for good measure.
Yes.
Like his season was on par of Tim Thomas. I think it was 2010, 2011. And no, he's regressed to a 915 this year, which is above league average.
But then 28 teams would kill for that. Probably.
Yeah, I know Edmonton would.
Yep.
Carolina
would.
Yeah. Oh God, their goalie situation too.
But and also, like, I just looked at their cap friendly real quick. It seems like they'll only have 1 year where Ullmark's getting 5 and Swayman will get whatever his extension is. So once Ullmark's next contract's up, they might be able to move that around a little bit easier. But yeah, now that you mention it, like you could run 1 more year with both of them in net, might as well, because there's such a luxury of having an elite goalie both nights, and it just makes the opponent's life hell on a back-to-back. I feel like, because it's like I remember, I think I went to a Hawks game. I don't know if the Hawks caught him on a second half of back-to-back this year, but they started Swayman or Ullmark, and I was like, doesn't matter. Like either one's gonna have a very good night in net regardless, and that's a testament to how good they are and a testament to how good a team defense Boston plays every night. And I feel like that really gets understated with really good goaltending is just, it's not only that the goalies are freaks and are playing insane. Like you said, Swayman's probably going to win the Vezina this year if he keeps it up, but it's also just the structure in front of them that is just so rock solid. Like the shot suppression Boston does is really something to be admired.
Yeah, I think it makes life easy for like the goaltending that the defense plays that well, but then it also makes life for the defense knowing that if they do mess up, they got a goalie that's going to make a save regardless of who's in there. It's just, yeah, always structure is like the first thing I think of with the Bruins as a hockey team. So, yeah, every year I feel especially the past few years we're like, oh, is this going to be the year that Boston falls off? This really felt like the year, especially with the Atlantic being the way it is with all these teams that are good, but not everything goes to plan. Like I feel the East has been such like I don't want to call it a shit show for lack of a better term, but it just feels kind of all over the place. Like I can't tell who, the favorite is right now, but if Boston keeps it up, like having 2 good goalies, having a good, defensive structure, if you can add another center into that team, like that's a a team that can go on a deep playoff run and maybe win a cup. Who knows? So
Jim Montgomery just has to make sure he utilizes his goalies the best way possible this year.
Yeah.
I think he learned from last year, but hopefully that, you ride the hot goalie, absolutely. But the second that hot goalie struggles, you got another one waiting on the bench. You got to make sure you get that because it's playoffs. Anything can happen.
That might have been the difference between them, going on a deep playoff run and blowing that series. So.
Yeah, it's awful.
Well, I don't know if you have anything else to ask Dylan, or we can get on to the lightning round questions and then wrap the podcast up. We've been appreciative. Been appreciative of the time you've taken for us. So we're going to get on to, the most important questions, stuff that actually matters. So we're going to ask you, what is some of your favorite music, whether it's a band, an artist, album, whatever.
So I'm an elder millennial. I'm still obsessed with, Blink-182, Green Day, Foo Fighters, that music I grew up on. I'm also really big into Kenny Chesney and Eric Church. I like a little bit of everything. I'm no Swiftie by any means, but I do enjoy Taylor Swift. I do enjoy her music. Certainly not to the point where a lot of people are like finding those Easter eggs in her songs or anything she does, she just exists and people are like, oh, she's telling us something. No, I just want to listen to her music and just vibe to that. And there's another smaller band called Say Anything that I've loved for feels like 20 years. They're finally going on tour again for the first time in 10 years next year. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, just, I'm someone who my playlist is still like early 2000s, like pop punk rock, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Can't let go of that. And I think that's just the elder millennial in me.
Yeah, it's my brother. He has all that stuff on his playlist. He loves Blink-182, loves a lot of those bands that were big in the 90s. And well, they're still big now, but that's when their big hits came out.
Right.
Yeah, as for Taylor Swift, I'm more like, I don't like Taylor Swift. Like, there's a few songs I like bangers, but I'm not again, same thing as you, not deep into the albums, but I'm fascinated by how big of a pop star she is, how much she has as just a global phenomenon that we have her going into the football world, and now Taylor Swift fans are coming football. I'm so fascinated by that more so than her being a musical artist, I guess.
It's crazy.
That's the real question. How was Taylor Swift at the Patriots game this weekend? That had to get some coverage, right?
I was there. I was covering the game. So it was, they had her on the Jumbotron, and I know they showed her a few times throughout the broadcast, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Just, I could never imagine being her level of famous to the point where you can't walk outside without getting swarmed. Good for her. She's a really good influence, I think, on a lot of people. There's way worse people that people can idolize, but it's crazy the effect she's having on the NFL, the Chiefs, and worlds are colliding. And it's fun to watch because it's people, they're like, oh, she's Michael Jackson famous, which I'm not a good judge of that because, I mean, when Michael Jackson died, I think I was 20. So
I remember when that happened. It was my last day of grade 2.
Oh, grade 2. Good Lord. I was like a sophomore adult. I was having a nap. I was having my mid-afternoon nap when that happened.
Yeah, I remember got home from school, last day of school, and I was outside with some friends in our backyard, and then I can hear from inside the house my mom yelling, "Oh my God, Michael Jackson died."
Oh my God.
That's how I remember that. Yeah.
That's, wow. Grade 2. Holy smokes.
All right. Favorite TV shows?
Scrubs will always be my number one, my comfort show. It is my all-time favorite show. Also really love Only Murders in the Building. It's on Hulu.
That's really good.
It is I love it. I think it's funny. I love how they really just lead into all the characters. And also big on the Chicago series, the Chicago Fire, Med, and PD. Really, really big into that. They have reruns pretty much every day. And my husband will sit there and be like, oh, I don't watch this. But then he'll well, what's this character? Who's this? What's this? I thought they were over here. So he's into that too. I'll tell you no, but I've gotten him very much into that with my obsessive rerun watching while I wait for the new season next month.
How about favorite movies?
I really like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
That's
classic superhero movie.
That's a good one. 10 Things I Hate About You. I like Heath Ledger, R.I.P. Those two of my favorites. And I love Disney movies. Growing up, I loved, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and
Oh,
those are
yeah,
always
yeah.
very good comfort movies. This is gonna sound weird, but my dog loves watching Secret Life of Pets, and I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's just like the colors that she can see, but she will sit and watch the movie, and it's just really funny, like watching her like sit there, like sit straight up like a person and watch this movie. So I'm like, I don't know if that was her past life or whatever. But anytime that's on, I will always watch that with her.
Yeah, I don't know how animals do it. There's this account I follow on Instagram. It's this cat she's an older cat, but she loves like watching cartoons and movies, and and like she'll wake up her owner to watch like these movies and shows. So I wonder like how like that works. It's up, but like she'll just be like watching the screen, whereas my cat, who is like sitting on my desk, I don't think she cares for any of that stuff. So she just likes to annoy me and be with me. So
As a cat should.
oh yeah, I would.
My dog likes watching the TV until the sound gets crazy, and then she's like, "I'm out.
Oh.
No,
Oh.
too much noise." Like we'll be like she likes Star Wars when like Rey's talking, but then Kylo Ren starts talking, and she'll leave the room. She doesn't like that.
All right, we know where she stands in that
It's so
franchise.
funny. But like when Rey's talking, she'll look right at the TV. So
That's so
like,
funny.
it's like, all right, were you British in your past life? Like, is that what we're getting at right now?
All right, so I don't know if you have any other questions to ask, Dylan, or we can wrap this up. I think it's a good place to wrap up.
No, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you for
very
having
much.
me. This was fun. I'm always happy to come on, and hopefully the Blackhawks can give you more positive things to talk about down the line.
Yeah.
Let's just get that top 3 pick this year, probably,
Yeah.
and we'll regroup in the off season.
Yeah.
We'll have fun watching the draft in the Sphere in Vegas.
Yeah. Yep. That's fear. Good Lord.
All right, yeah. Thank you, Lauren, for coming on, and I hope you have a great Christmas and a great holidays and a great New Year.
Yeah, you guys too.